For the supporters of the message of Our Lady of La Salette, there's a kind of a conundrum for those who've taken a deep dive into it. There are two versions of the collection of messages of Our Lady. One that the Vatican made public, and then another collection of them that are longer and contain some things that have been cited by some controversial figures in the past of the sort of first and second phases of the traditionalist movement to point to the crisis in the church being the core message of Our Lady of La Salette, and it being a message that is far spicier than the Vatican ever wanted to be revealed. One of those controversial figures was Canon or Father Gregory Hess. He was a very colorful character who would give talks while drinking fine wine, wearing a 19th century cassock, but was in every way a legitimate priest. He actually had worked for a time in the post-Vatican II Vatican Roman Curia under John Paul II, whom he didn't have nice things to say about, but we'll leave that as it may. Father Hess zeroed in on a phrase that he said came from La Salette, that there would be 2 worm-ridden popes. That's a banger of a message, that the chastisement would entail 2 popes who were essentially evil or rotten to the core. For years, I have never been able to actually find a source for that claim other than Father Gregory Hess. And then some people did some digging. Specifically, a friend of this channel, actual friend of this channel, unironically, Mr. Laramie Hirsch, who has a new Substack, the Weltgeist. He has an article where he is positing that the 2 worm-ridden popes are Bergoglio and Prevost, Francis and Leo XIV. If you find that subject interesting, I will have a link to it in my show notes at returntotradition.org for you to read. I neither endorse nor condemn his hypothesis. I will, however, say this. I bring it up his Substack because he found a source for it. And it turns out the 2 worm-ridden popes is a mistranslation, according to Mr. Hirsch. But the actual translation isn't much better. It's 2 doubtful popes. Like I said, not much better. And he shared this with me, this source, and I will just go over some of this here. So this comes from Reject Modernism, a post from their website back in February of 2014, where they do give you some good citations in their show notes or in their actual notes here about the message of La Salette, the full message. And I'm just going to go over this portion of it here because we are interested in prophecy, and the truth of the 2 worm-ridden popes part of the message needs to be brought to greater light. So here's from this article from Reject Modernism. Quote, Melanie was not acquainted with the famous prophecy of St. Malachi, but in 1894 she told this good priest that among the future events she saw unrolling in the course of the apparition, quote, I don't see any great pope or great monarch before an extremely great tribulation. Horrifying, terrible, and general for all Christendom. But before that time, twice there will be a short-lived peace, 2 shaky, servile, doubtful popes. Anyone who thinks the crisis in the church we suffer today began with the Second Vatican Council need only read Melanie's correspondence. The following extracts from her letters to Father Rubad are a fair sample. Quote, when the secret has been scorned, misunderstood, held back for money, one must be surprised at nothing. The church will endure forever. Our Lord said so. But among the teaching members of the church, what traitors, what apostates, what mercenaries, what sectarians who bear the imprint or the sign of the beast with 10 horns St. John speaks of in his vision on Patmos. But this beast, similar to the Lamb, who rises out of the earth, isn't it the figure of faithless ecclesiastics? I firmly believe so. Happy those who die in God's grace, for those who live will see sad and terrifying things. We still haven't reached the beginning of the end. Extract from her letter to her priest, January 2nd, 1892. Later the same year, her words, apropos of a good priest who is losing his eyesight, have sadly increased in relevance today. Quote, oh, how God afflicts his true servants in these times. But this affliction is a punishment for the half-Christians who have rendered themselves unworthy of hearing the truth, the word of truth, which they obstinately refuse to put into practice. When God favored us, when he was giving us all we needed, we abandoned him. Now we blaspheme him like the damned. God was giving us his graces in manifold ways. Now he deprives us of everything. He plays deaf, indifferent, as we did towards him. We have nothing to say. And now he is taking from us the few good priests, who despite all the thunderbolts of those sold for gold, never ceased teaching us the practice of the Christian virtues and flight from sin. You'd think the devil would keep quiet inasmuch as men are almost all working for him, for his triumph. Well, no, he turns himself into an angel of light, aping true apparitions, truly divine. Later, he'll show his horns in order to destroy the true divine apparitions by his impostures. It's noteworthy that in all these false apparitions, there are always many flattering words directed to certain persons, which these seers, seeing only the devil, apply to some gullible person wrapped in refined self-love. It's also true there are visionaries without visions who don't even need the devil's help, being themselves possessed. End quote. That sounds like something from a letter from Archbishop Vigano. Now, it was taken as an excerpt from a work called The Secret of La Salette, The Little Apocalypse of Our Lady by Solange Herz. If you're familiar with Solange Herz's writings, you'll know that she has impeccable credentials in the kind of scholarly, 1 foot in the scholarly, 1 foot in accessible for normal readers as a writer world. She has a lot of good credentials. And she had the letters of Melanie to her priest. And that is where the message of Our Lady of La Salette invokes two doubtful popes. Not two worm-ridden popes, but a doubtful pope, one could argue, would be rotten to the core. Someone who managed to gain the papacy through foul means of some kind, who went along with secretive plans to subvert and distort the teachings of the church, to implement, invoking another prophecy, this one from Fulton Sheen, who himself was invoking those prophecies spoken about well before his time, to help bring about the ape of the church. Any cleric who would help with that project would, by definition, be worm-ridden, rotten to the core. So is the phrase two worm-ridden popes in the prophecy? Strictly speaking, no. But a synonym is. And that is the truth of it. Now, whether you trust that part of the message or not, you can let me know in the comments. Because the Vatican famously held on to the third secret, or the message of Our Lady of La Salette, for many years before approving a sort of Reader's Digest version of it. They redacted parts of it. And that is weirdly not that dissimilar to today, where you have Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez as the prefect for the Dicastery of the Doctrine of the Faith, giving quasi-approval to Marian apparitions today, but saying that they need to watch out for some parts of the message that they come bearing because they kind of can harm communion and cause division in the church. Almost as if, on the one hand, recognizing that Our Lady is constantly warning people about something wrong in the hierarchy, while not wanting to go against the message of Our Lady. It's weird. It's a weird time to be in when you pay attention to Catholic prophecy. I want to thank Mr. Laramie Hirsch for pointing out to me where that part of the message was. I spent a long time finding it, could not find it, and yet he found it quickly. And I'm very happy that he did. I'll have a link in my show notes at returntotradition.org or at the Anthony Stine Substack, a link to his, if you want to read his argument about Bergoglio and Prevost, Francis and Leo. It's up to you. I'll leave that analysis of that to you and your opinions on that to you. But let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on social media helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.